everyone, today I'm going to show you how I achieved this men's shirt refashion. I'm starting with a shirt that used to be my husband's, and the first thing I've done is removed the sleeves, tried on the shirt, and marked a new shoulder point and marked how much I want to take in the side seam. So as this is a men's shirt, obviously the shoulder seam is going to be way further down on my arms than it needs to be. So I take off the sleeves first, and I've tried it on, and that top mark is the mark where I want my new shoulder seam to be, and I am transferring that to the other side so that they match. I only mark it on one side, and then I transfer it to the other side. So I'm just measuring the distance from the edge of the shirt to the new shoulder seam. When I removed the sleeves, I did this with a seam ripper. I didn't just cut them off. So I have a good seam measurement. And then now I'm going to measure from the side seam to the underarm where I want to take in the shirt. And I'm matching that measurement from the side seam, just going up the underarm on the other side. And now I'm going to make sure that I can see that mark on the inside, because of course we're going to be sewing from the inside of the shirt. And I am going to flip the shirt inside out and kind of pinch it at the current side seam. And I'm going to stitch from that mark that I made on the underarm, and I want it to be kind of a swingy shape, so I'm not going to stitch straight down. I'm going to blend that into the current side seam because I'm going to use the original hem on this shirt, and I'm going to do that on both sides. So again, I'm using that underarm mark that I marked whenever I tried it on my body to see how much I need to take in on the underarms, and I'm going to blend it outwards. Okay, so here we have my stitch, and I've already cut off the excess. I've flipped this shirt around, so that part on the left side was the armhole. And I've done that to both sides, and now I want to reattach my sleeves, and I did stitch and newly serge that seam. So now I have my new armhole, well, almost my new armhole. First I need to cut my new armhole. So I'm going to draw in a curve from the shoulder mark to my new side seam, and I'm just kind of eyeballing this. Just, you can trace another shirt that you like if you want, but I am just kind of eyeballing it based on all of the arm size I've looked at in my life. So you want it to be pretty smooth. You want to try to have a straight, you don't want your underarm at the side seam to come to a point. So you want to have a nice curve there as well. And I'm going to do that on both sides. If you wanted to, you could try to slip one armhole into the other and cut them at the same time. But, you know, I'm just more of a fast and loose kind of girl, so I'm just drawing in my new armhole here for both sides of the shirt. And now I'm going to cut that out. And the line that I've drawn is actually the seam line. So as I'm cutting, I'm leaving myself about a 1/4 inch seam allowance to the inside, or I guess I should say outside of that line. And again, just eyeballing this. Okay, so now I have my new armhole, and I'm going to get my sleeve, and it's important that you don't mix up your sleeve. So you want to make sure that your left sleeve is going on the left side and vice versa. And you tell that because the buttons are going to, your button and button placket are going to face the back. So that is not the correct sleeve. This is the correct sleeve. And you just judge that by, you know where your top center of your sleeve is, and your button placket should be facing the back of your shirt. So I'm going to start from the top shoulder seam and the top center of my sleeve, and I'm going to pin that in place and then sort of walk the sleeve around so I can figure out how much I will need to take off of the sleeve. Okay, so let me bring you in a little closer here. Sorry, it's a little dark. I have my shoulder seam and the top of my sleeve, center top of my sleeve, pinned in place, and I am going to walk this in to see where that sleeve meets with my side seam, and that's going to tell me where my new under seam of my sleeve needs to go. So I'm just sort of walking this in. You could pin it, but I mean, if you pin it, you're just gonna have to take it right back out. So I just kind of walk it in, and you want to do this on the front and the back. And this is a plaid shirt, but I'm not at all worried about matching up these plaids. When you refashion, you don't have those kind of luxuries, really. Again, just walking in that sleeve to see where it meets up with the side seam. Doing a mark on both sides. And then I'm going to unpin that sleeve and take a look. So this tells me how much I need to take out of my sleeve. I'm going to measure between those two marks, and that is how much I need to remove. But I'm going to split that in between the under seam because I don't want my sleeve to be uneven front and back. So I'm going to take that measurement, divide it in half, and then measure that distance from the underside seam, and that is going to be what I use to take in the sleeve. So I'm going to mark out those old marks. You can also just hit them with an iron real quick so I know which ones to use. And I am not going to be using the placket or the cuff. So I'm just going to clip off the cuff. And of course I'm going to save my buttons. Always good to have any extra buttons on hand. And that frees up my undersleeve seam for the sleeve. So from the inside of the sleeve, I'm going to sew all the way down to the existing sleeve opening, but I'm going to narrow down that sleeve a little bit so that it fits into my new armhole. And now I have my new sleeve underseam. I've already trimmed off that excess. You can see what I mean there by the plaids not matching up. I still have my button placket on my sleeve, so I know which sleeve this is. And I am going to make sure that is facing the back. And now I can reattach my sleeve and it will line up correctly. This time I'm going to stitch the under seam of the sleeve to the side seam of the shirt, and everything else will match up accordingly. So now I have attached my underarm, or my armhole, you can see there, and next I want to hem the sleeve. I've already tried it on and marked where I want the hem to be. My ruler is getting a little faded, it's hard to see the numbers. Really hard apparently. And I am going to do this on both sleeves. I went ahead and attached both sleeves. Obviously, you're gonna do the same thing for each. And I'm gonna line those on top of each other. I cut them both just above the cuff seam, so I know that they're pretty much in the same spot. I've marked where I want them to go. So I'm going to mark where I want the sleeve to be folded. I'm going to do a 1-inch hem, and I'm going to probably blind stitch that so it's a nice clean looking finish. I'm going to chop off the excess, save those buttons, and now I still have a little bit of that placket left on my sleeve, so I'm just going to stitch that closed and just kind of ignore it. If you wanted to, well, no, you probably couldn't. I was going to say you could remove it. You could hem it above the placket, so you're just cutting that off altogether. But once it's stitched down and the hem is in place, all of these plaids of the original shirt are pretty perfectly lined up, so you really won't notice it very much at all. So I will stitch those plackets closed and then serge the raw edge, flip that inside, press it, and do a blind stitch to hold it in place. Okay, so here's my finished sleeve that has been pressed and turned under, blind stitched, and it's looking good. Now we can start on the neckline. I am going to rip off the collar because I do want to keep the back neckline the same. I like to use a razor blade, and I'm just going to go underneath the what's that called? The collar stand, and remove that from the top of this shirt. In some cases, both the front and back of the collar stand will be connected to the shirt separately, and in some cases you'll be able to get it off in one go. Okay, now that that's gone, we can reshape the neckline. I'm going to fold the shirt so that the edges of the button placket in the front line up and everything is laying flat. My shoulder seams match, and the back is presumably folded at center back. So as I said before, I'm going to keep the back of the shirt where it naturally is, and I want to do a nice deep V in the front. I've already tried it on and determined which button I'm going to go to, which I'm going to go to the top of that second button there. So I'm just going to draw a straight line, since I want it to be a V, not really a curve, from the shoulder seam to, well, roughly around the shoulder seam to a point just above that button that I know I want to keep. And then I'm going to clip that off, again leaving myself about 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, saving that button. And now I've got some bias tape that I just had in my stash that I'm going to use to finish the raw edge and create my new neckline. And that is going to be sewn all the way around and stitched down to the inside, so you don't see any bias from the front of the garment. And now we're moving on to the pocket. As you can see, I finished my V neckline. The bias tape looks really nice and neat on the inside. And I really wanted to add a little bit of fun to this kind of more serious looking plaid, and I thought it would be fun to do a nice giant pocket. So I just kind of arbitrarily picked a size that I thought would look good after trying it on, marking where I wanted it to go, deciding how wide and long it should be. And I just sewed up a big rectangle pocket and applied it in a patch manner. And this is my finished shirt dress. I'm super happy with the way it turned out. I love these sleek and clean sleeves. You can kind of see how those are finished there. Sorry, it didn't really want to refocus. There we go. And I mean, the only thing it's missing, I have to say, is side seam pockets. But I love the deep V, how clean the neckline looks. And I'm really happy with the way that turned out. And I like my giant pocket. I think it is super fun. It would be a great dress for fall to layer over some tights. I really think it will look cute over some bright tights. Here's a closer look at the inside. You can see how I did that bias all the way around the neckline, my serged seams, and my finished sleeve hem. Ooh, and a thread that I missed. And that is my finished shirt dress. Thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial. I hope you found it interesting. I also wanted to just quickly acknowledge that I understand that this tutorial is not accessible to everyone, but it is a project that I was making for myself and thought some people might enjoy seeing the process of. If you want to see some more of my tutorials, be sure to click the playlist and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. Happy sewing!